The video game industry is massive. Billions of dollars, billions of players around the world. From smartphones to PCs that cost more than a car. This industry is bigger than humanly imaginable. And it's only getting larger. And yet, as technology improves and gets easier to use, why haven't we seen a gradual improvement on the quality of these games over the quantity? Why does it seem that games from 25 years ago feel better put together than they are today? Well, to discuss this, I gotta take you back to those times. A time that fewer and fewer people nowadays feel nostalgic towards, because they weren't even born yet. Gran Turismo. We all know this series, and the impact the first game had on the wider gaming landscape. 10 million copies sold, massive critical acclaim, and the beginning of a subgenre that's still going on strong, the console racing simulator. Much like Mario 64 to 3D platformers, FPSs to Doom, and gory fighters like Mortal Kombat, Gran Turismo clones began to flood the market after GT's massive success, and would continue to almost a decade after GT1's release. And nearly every major gaming publisher would throw their hat into the ring, much to the glee of younger me when I was growing up. Microsoft had Bizarre Creations and their amazing Project Gotham racing series, and then years later, Forza Motorsport. Konami had their super underrated Enthusia, which, personally, feels better on the wheel than GT4. Sue me. Capcom created an anime-inspired take on the genre called Automodelista. I don't know what a modelista is, but I digress. EA added RPG elements similar to GT with Porsche Unleashed. I could go on and on with these absolute gems. But as we've all experienced, not all clones are good. R-Racing Evolution from Namco was from the Ridge Racer and MotoGP series. It had a story and was really underbaked. Acclaim had Vanishing Point, where every car felt like a waterbed. A1 Games had racing. Ubisoft had Speed Devils, and most other publishers just had shovelware garbage. However, there was one major publisher around this time that not only threw their hat into the ring, but a pretty decent amount of cash as well. They didn't want to make a clone. They wanted to really cut into GT's market share. Who were they? Squaresoft rode a massive wave of success from the financial boom left behind after another PlayStation success story, Final Fantasy VII. Square went from being a mid-tier publisher to being arguably the face of the highest selling console in the world at that time. This fueled Square to dip their toes into other genres, including fighting games with Urgai's God Bless the Ring, okay, and a badass driving game called Racing Lagoon, which never saw a release outside Japan. Just recently, an English patch was made. It was a driving RPG from some of the people who worked on Final Fantasy, and it's about a mix of toge racing with highway racing, so think Initial D and One Gun Midnight. Had a kid that was raised by Cloud from 7, but had character designs that came to Fist of the North Star. Yeah, it was something like that. Kind of weird. Sadly, as cool as that concept is, and as incredible as the soundtrack is, the game didn't do financially or critically well, leaving the series dormant ever since its release back in '99. However, the team behind this game got a second chance when Square looked at what games stopped Final Fantasy VII from being the best-selling game on the PS1. That being GT. Square saw that game and said to the team, "We are gonna bury their asses 6 feet under the finish line." And in 2000, Driving Emotion Type S was unveiled. Being developed by a new team at Square named Escape, they were comprised of talent from the previous Racing Lagoon and Chocobo Racing, apparently, and had worked with Dream Factory on Urgai's, which did pretty well. Certainly better than Chocobo Racing.
Bro is the Grim Eater.
Either way, Square and Escape gunned hard towards GT, trying to take their top spot in the subgenre. And like I mentioned, Square dumped serious money into this game. They got licensing for Ferrari and Porsche back when GT studio Polyphony waited until 2006 to get Ferrari in the game, and until 2017 for Porsche, because these brands wanted a fat amount of cash before even considering to be put in a racing game. That's why it was so hard to find these brands in any games outside of the biggest AAA franchises. Think Need for Speed. And yet here comes Square, strutting their peacock feathers around with their own gaming convention in Yokohama, and at E3 later on that year, they even hired Shinji Hosoe. Hosoe? The man behind the iconic soundtracks for Ridge Racer and Street Fighter EX to compose songs for the game.
日芸さんのスタッフが結構クラブ通いする人たちばっかりだったんですね。会社終わってクラブ行って朝になって終わったら会社に帰る。そのくらいもう毎日行ったり来たり結構踊り狂ってた。
Square bet big time on this game's success, trying so hard to make something legendary, something to beat Gran Turismo. Did they? Well, for starters, this looks, sounds, and feels Y2K as hell. It just gives off this nighttime aesthetic that just sucks you right in, without reminding me completely of Gran Turismo. If anything, it reminds me of the PS2 itself with its darker, bolder colors and cooler atmosphere. They're given a few modes, including a career mode called Arcade Type S, Line Training, Time Attack, and Versus. Arcade Type S isn't like GT mode, but is more like the arcade mode, where you win races to unlock new cars and tracks, working up from Honda Civics and Celicas to Ferrari and even official Japanese Grand Touring Championship race cars. This thing featured the iconic Castrol Supra before GT3 did, which is pretty cool. This car list is damn good for what was a new team working on brand new hardware, and these tracks are pretty freaking awesome as well, not only for the modeling but for the post-processing. It may not look impressive by today's standards, but back when most games looked like this was a big step up, and certainly for 2000. This was only a few months off the PS2's launch, at least for the Japanese release, so visually, I'm very impressed. Track-wise, beyond visuals, the variety is pretty good as well, featuring ovals, highway circuits, but also Tsukuba and Suzuka, alongside autocross layouts. Now, GT wouldn't get either of those until GT4 years later. So, you get a car list that make Jimmy Broadbent bust, with every major Japanese brand represented, with brands like Ferrari and Porsche, a good track list with licensed locations to boot, a fantastic soundtrack. Gorgeous visuals for a game made back in 2000, all wrapped up in a package that would make any racing developer, hell, any developer at the time, notice. So, did Square's massive gamble pay off? Well, this all comes down to one crucial piece, the one thing that separates the best from the worst, no matter the genre, the gameplay. How does this game feel? Okay, that mission in GTA 5.
Yeah, this is totally justified consent.
You should see yourself.
Everything's like 2D.
Yeah, that's how the entire game feels. This is supposed to be a sim, and yet I feel drunk, which is also a shame because if you're like me, you took a Ferrari to Tsukuba, ran a few laps, And when the replay popped up, you noticed that the replay cameras are almost exactly like Best Motoring's replays. That's a great detail. There was clear heart, soul, and attention put into this game. And yet, here we are. A long forgotten GT clone that forgot what deep down made GT so good. It was never just the music, or the car models, or the menus, or a general vibe of the game. Those were all sides to the main course of what made GT fantastic, the driving itself. And the fans of the genre took notice of driving emotion type S and dropped it so hard, it bombed and killed the studio. Reportedly, the Japanese release saw roughly 48,000 copies sold in the first week, just to drop off. Then, when they retooled the car models and AI for the Western release months later, they only sold 2,500 in the first week. Wow. Escape disbanded, and Square hasn't attempted a single racing game since. But within then and now, what I find haunting about this game isn't the game itself, but what I said before, this being a long forgotten GT clone that forgot what deep down made GT so good. Now, how many games have come out in the past 23 years since this game dropped? Hell, 24. That perfectly describes driving emotion type S versus Gran Turismo. But think beyond driving games. I reckon every major AAA franchise that's released something in that time, especially recently, has slowly become what this game was to Gran Turismo. A game where the budget is massive, there's tons of talent, and a massive publisher banking on that game's success, only for them to miss the entire point behind why that franchise is fantastic and have the game disappoint, and they never learn their lesson. Off the top of my head, Fallout, Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Dead Space 3, Need for Speed, Halo, Forza Motorsport, and to an extent, but not completely, Forza Horizon. I digress. You can drop in the comments all the franchises that, despite nearly unlimited resources, have dropped the ball so many times, it waters down the entire franchise, until it feels like cardboard with this cool minimalist logo to it. You know the industry has been difficult if even Gran Turismo of all games is suffering as well. Now, I still love the game. I remember spending my entire spring break back in 2022 grinding and beating the game with my wheel on the PS4, not 5, and having a blast. But I can't fight the fact that a free mod for GT4, a game that's 20 years old, is better at being a Gran Turismo than the one released by Kaz himself. And that's why I feel driving emotion type S is significant, because there are aspects of this game, despite how unplayable it is, that I love. I adore this music, in the minis especially. They captured what it would feel like to combine Gran Turismo's jazz fusion with Square's, I don't know, the aura, for lack of a better word. I can't find a word for it, just the aura. The car models with fully detailed interiors are genuinely impressive when you consider that wasn't even a consideration at Polyphony. And yet here comes these underdogs pulling it off for every car in the damn game. And yet, much like so many titles that have come out since the game's release, it seems like no matter how much money, time, and people you put into a game, a bad game is a bad game. I never want to root for a game's failure though. Keep that in mind. I want people to be given as many chances as financially possible to learn from their mistakes and grow as artists. That's what Polyphony did after they made their first game, Motor 2 Grand Prix, and it wasn't very good. But they took the critique and made it better, and then turned the sequel into the groundwork for Gran Turismo, which we all play today. Now imagine if Square allowed Escape another year to tweak the handling model. Maybe then we would have gotten a proper competitor to GT, and Square Enix, would have become a household name in the genre. But since that didn't happen, all we have is just this monument to mismanagement.